So welcome, ladies, to the show, and thank you for being part of this.
Thanks for hosting, Chris.
No problem. So we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Sara Pape. I'm the owner of Three Raptor Consulting. Before I ran a small business, I was in the nonprofit world for about 11 and a half years, 7 of those as a CEO. And since the time I started through now, so about 13 years, I've been an active grant writer. I left because I was struggling with some compassion fatigue and rediscovered that my purpose and my mission is to truly invest in nonprofit leaders and small business leaders. And so now I own Three Raptor Consulting, and we specialize in working with nonprofits and small businesses. And we really work as a team to pour ourselves in, sharing as many resources and as much education as we can to help them navigate all the challenges of being in business and to help them be more effective in their missions.
Hello, I'm Lauren Ellis, and I'm the president and CEO of United Way of Southwest Oklahoma. And I've been here almost 6 years. And so every year just is a little bit different, and definitely we're traveling uncharted waters right now. So I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you all to discuss those challenges and how we can help.
Hi, my name's Angela Schertle, and I own a farmers insurance agency in Lawton. We're located over at 44th and Gore, right by the Wolf Creek Medical Center. I've been in insurance for about 5 years, and it's been a great opportunity to be able to help people find a way to provide protection for those things that are important to them. On the nonprofit side, we're community representatives for the Kindness Revolution, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit.
Excellent. Well, I was muted the whole time, but you ladies weren't, so they're here to see you, not me anyway. So I want to jump right into this and go through a couple of talking points here and see what we can do in this time of this pandemic, because especially with nonprofits, I know that money is down across the board from a commercial and business perspective, but I know it's definitely affecting nonprofits. So donors make more likely to donate nonprofits that they have after roll. In other words, donors give to nonprofits they volunteer with, know someone who works or volunteers there. I'm sorry, I'm reading this horribly right now, where they participate in the activity. So how do you see donors interacting with your individual nonprofits going forward in all of this? And we'll start with Lauren.
That's going to be a challenge for us. It's actually really sad. This week we were scheduled to have our Day of Caring, which is our largest day of volunteerism in Lawton, Fort Sill community. And so I'm really sad that we have had to postpone that. We're very much a full contact business model where we want to be in front of our donors, and we really want to be in front of our volunteers. And as a super small staff of 4, we couldn't do what we do for the community without our volunteers. And so we're having to take a look at how all of those things are going to be done differently. We're currently in the middle of our community investment process, which is where citizens come together, volunteer army, to review our partners' grant applications. And usually those volunteers get to go meet with the directors of our awesome funded partners, and they get to see the operations and the boots on the ground. And so we've had to get really creative and we don't want to lose that element of this process. And so we're having to be more nimble than ever. And we're learning every single day, literally flying by the seat of our pants, just trying to make sure that our volunteers are staying engaged. And that's taking a lot of creativity and patience and grace. That's all I have to say, really.
For sure. So Angela, how do you see that donors are connecting in this time with these nonprofits that they have an active role with?
So we have several ways that we try and reach out and help people, and we've got people that are coming to us wanting to know if they can interact with some of the things that we have going on. I'm coming at this from a little bit different angle because I'm not running a nonprofit, but I'm on a side where I can actually help to find and provide some funding through some of the organizations that I work with. We've got several volunteers who come to us and asked us, how can we help with some of the things that you're doing? And we reach out to the people and try and connect and be a resource for people to be able to find nonprofits that they can work with to be able to help with whatever activities they have going on. Through Farmers, we have a grant program going on for nonprofits in the area that are impacted by COVID, where we can apply for a grant for up to $1,500 for any of the agencies in the area that need the assistance. And we've worked with several of them recently. We've submitted a few applications, so we're excited to see what that's going to look like when it comes back. And we're happy to do that for any of the agencies in our area because they're so vital. We've also got the ability to be able to give donations to the organizations and be able to have that backed and supported by farmers as a corporation. So they're trying to do as much as they can to pump money into the local communities. And then on the Kindness Revolution side, we're working to be able to, again, tap into some of the financial resources that the Kindness Revolution as a whole has. It is a national nonprofit organization, and it's intended to come into a community and help change the culture through kindness initiatives. And they do have a small grant program for people that have small needs. So we could apply for a $100 grant for somebody who has a house fire and just needs something to get started, or for people who, we do apply for these for teachers sometimes to be able to help get some of their classroom projects up and running. So it can really be used pretty widely. And then we also have the ability through the Kindness Revolution to help to run some fundraisers and try and help raise some money for some of the things that we have going on in the community. It's a wide application, so I hate to commit to any one thing because it's really unique to every organization and every person that we talk to. And that's one of the exciting things about it, because there's so many great things going on here, and we just want to help be a part of that.
So, Sarah, I want to follow up with you there because, without running a nonprofit, you consult with a lot of them. So what advice are you giving to these nonprofits that are kind of in limbo, that don't have a game plan or can't quite figure out what needs to be done in this time to make sure they're still connecting with their donors and their volunteers properly?
So I think the first thing is just to reach out through either an email, a phone call, or a text message. Let them know that you're still there, that you're still alive, and really just ask how they're doing, because everybody's been so impacted lately and everything has changed so much that if these nonprofits initiate a conversation with volunteers and donors of, hey, how are you? What do you need? How are things going? Have you been sick? Is there anything we can do to help you? I think those are the questions that need to be asked right now, because we're all kind of spinning. And traditionally, nonprofits have always kind of existed in more of a topsy-turvy world because things are always changing. We work with high-risk populations and we're at the mercy of foundations. And so I think they're a little bit more accustomed to the shift and getting back on your feet very quickly. And so if nonprofits could really take the role of becoming centers of communication and checking in on all of their volunteers and donors, I think that would be incredible. And then from there, if they could just continue to reach out to volunteers and donors, perhaps offer some volunteer training through Zoom. Perhaps this is a great time with donors to really get testimonials. Why is our nonprofit important to you? To do some incredible surveys of what do you love about our nonprofit? What do you wish we did? And to really hone in on the services and expectations that both donors and volunteers have. It's a great time to realign, revisit missions and vision statements and create a strategic plan involving donors, which normally doesn't happen. But as we use their dollars and expect them to basically fund our mission, I think it would be very instrumental and very grassroots involving them in that plan and getting their opinion, because it would just give a wider perspective of how changes could happen. Also, too, I think just really engaging in social media, telling the story of the nonprofit and perhaps telling stories of the donors, especially if the donor has a business right now. They could really tell the story of those small businesses and help drive people even there to continue making them prosperous.
So is there any kind of potential conflict, advertisement kind of thing where you're telling the story of a donor in that sense? Is there any regulation that I'm not aware of that would prevent nonprofits from doing that in an advertising perspective? You see that a lot with a donation, like in an underwriting sense or paid advertisement. So how would that apply in this particular situation?
So that's a great question, Chris. I think that if you just perhaps told the story of the donor and maybe said that they owned a business, people would recognize that. or provide the donor with opportunities where they could host mini fundraisers to drive people to their business for you, so that it's not direct marketing and it wouldn't be a conflict of interest. It would just increase the sphere of influence that both you and that business had. For example, we're getting ready to launch a food drive, and so we're strategically placing baskets in different small businesses to drive people into those businesses, and that will be kind of how we do it as marketing, but nothing is being exchanged for that. So I think if nonprofits are just careful to not say, oh, we support agency X, please go buy there. They say agency X is collecting food for us, or agency X has been gracious and donated this for us. That's sharing their story and their mission without crossing that line.
So, Lauren, with new regulations, these new social distancing protocols, offices shutting down, how is that making it either more difficult or sometimes more beneficial or better, easier to interact with donors and volunteers in this time?
Again, it's definitely presenting a challenge. We're used to being in front of our donors for sure and our volunteers. So many of our funded partners have had to change their operations. We sent out an impact survey at the beginning of all of this to kind of gauge their concerns and any changes that they've had to make in their operations. And based on the CDC regulations and so many of the requirements, some of our partners have had to close their doors temporarily. Others have had to furlough employees, which we hate to see. But as United Way, we're there to support them, and we've been working with them to see if they need help with the Paycheck Protection Program, if they need information on the EIDL loan program. So we've been more involved, I would say, in that aspect as far as all of these new resources and trying to be that hub and that one-stop shop for those, for our partners, as far as helping them navigate through all of this.
So, Angela, I know that, sorry, I'm switching my cameras here, that we've got these situations where you're obviously able to work, and you're at your kind of where you manage the kindness revolution, and you're able to interact with others. But is your office is closed where people still have to interact with you digitally versus phone and email and Zoom calls and whatnot?
We are working primarily remotely. I am taking appointments only within the office. So as people need, I will be able to meet with them. And as far as supporting all of the agencies, it really, we're being as flexible as we can, doing a lot, like I said, a lot of work remotely, but I'm happy to be wherever I need to be and wherever I can be safely in order to be able to support what we have going on. Obviously, we're trying to take into account all of the different restrictions and regulations. So we're being very flexible right now, and this has presented us an opportunity to really see where we can kind of change things up and be creative and create new relationships that we had never had before, just because we're having to operate differently.
Gotcha. So in that respect, you said you were working on some connections, and obviously having to be selective with that. Are there any that you can speak to specifically that you're able to get off the ground right now that are going forward momentum-wise?
Oh, absolutely. We have been working very closely with Sara.
Oh, and we lost her. Okay.
Oh,
That was weird. She must have got, she's back. She got a phone call. I bet. We can see you. Are you there? And she froze.
Oh dear.
So we're going to jump to Sara because she just mentioned you. So Sara, jump in and kind of add to what she's saying.
Sure. So there's a group of us that have gotten together to really work to support the community. In fact, we had an unofficial meeting this morning where we're working to just put a little bit more structure to the group. And so we're coming together. There's Angela. Yes. And we, through Angela's initiative, we've started quite a few projects. We've got, I have to cheat and look at my calendar. Thursday is National Picnic Day. And so we're encouraging families to go eat outside, to just enjoy some sunshine. And so two of our small businesses, Aranda's Mexican Grill and Buffalo Grove Coffee, are offering special picnic packages for people to join in. Sunday is National Pet and Child Safety Day, and so my dogs have graciously volunteered to film some safety videos that we're sharing on Facebook, and Wits and Development has jumped in there and is sharing videos of that as well. Through Angela, we were able to connect with Crazy Cones, and they are now sponsoring the prizes for our coloring contest to engage children. And then we have the National Storyteller Day that we have coming up. And then we're also getting ready to launch, oh my gosh, why do I always go blank on the name? The food drive. The Forced to End Hunger. Yes, and I'll let Angela take over there.
Okay.
Okay, so the Force to End Hunger is an initiative that we're doing through events by our team and the Kindness Revolution and 3Raptor, as well as in conjunction with a few other community partners, where we're raising. We are taking food donations at certain locations to be able to give to the Soldiers Closet with the Armed Services YMCA. And we will also be incorporating with that a t-shirt sale. So you can purchase a t-shirt, and I'm really excited to be able to release the design on it because it's going to be a really great opportunity for people to purchase the t-shirt that will have that money then go to purchasing diapers and wipes for the Armed Services Y. This is one of our local organizations that has really been struggling through this time because they are there to serve the junior enlisted out at Fort Sill. And with everybody being hit so hard, there's a lot of people that are going to that organization to ask for donations or to use the Soldiers Closet. And so we want to make sure that we're helping to give them back as much as we can so that they can better serve those soldiers.
So in terms of communication with donors, volunteers, nonprofits, even those that are in need, we've mentioned social media. What other forms of communication is everybody using to be able to get the word out and maintain those relationships? And we'll let Lauren jump in.
We're doing a lot of the same, really. I think the most painful part is not being able to be in person with, like I keep saying, our volunteers, our partners, and our donors. Our volunteers are, this is our board week, so we're having to find new ways to communicate and different rules and regulations with that. But email is working really well still. We also plan to have more formal, meaningful, individualized communication as we go on through this. And apparently my dog has a comment she'd like to make. Anyway, because it's really, the whole part of telling our story, it's going to be monumentally important, even more so during all of this time. And Sarah's mentioned this, to connect with your donors and let them know that, yeah, we're still here. I've had several calls with colleagues across the country, and we joke about, what did a normal work day used to be? There was a cutoff at some point, and it's all one big blurry Monday, really, in our world right now. And so trying to manage that has been a challenge. But our volunteers are awesome, and so they're so responsive in their communication back with us, and so are our partners. So we're trying to, again, just kind of stay as connected as we possibly can. But as we move forward and hopefully, eventually we will overcome all of this, then our story is going to change, as it should. And so I encourage all nonprofits to really take stock of the changes that they're making. And nonprofits are the best problem solvers in the world. And so we need to step up and prove that we are. And just because we're not physically at our office doesn't mean that we're not working feverishly from home to make sure that people are being served the way that they need, because Lawton has a very vulnerable population, and I get sad. I get really sad. It's hard not being in the office and not being able to see our regulars who stop by and maybe just want a bottle of water or just somebody to talk to. So that's the population I worry about the most, because our volunteers and donors have been awesome through this. But not being able to connect with the people we serve has been the hardest part.
So follow up with that. What's the best way for a nonprofit to establish a relationship with a foundation or somebody like United Way? I know the connection with United Way as an agency, as a funded partner, is an annual process that goes through. But in general, for those that maybe can take a nonprofit on as part of a foundation or connected to that foundation, how do you suggest that these nonprofits are doing that with larger funding sources like foundations?
Sarah, please jump in, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to speak on behalf of other foundations, because what we do as United Way is the money that we invest is very different from a foundation that has residual income that they very smartly invest, and that's an annual thing for them. Our ability to invest is only as good as our ability to fundraise, and so our challenges are a little different from other foundations. And but I've seen foundations step up. I've seen organizations, like Farmers Insurance, a great example with Angela, where they're presenting grant opportunities. And so I encourage all nonprofits, even small businesses, to think outside of the box. It's not your typical foundation work anymore. Businesses are rising up and creating their own way to fund, and that's so important because some of our larger regional foundations are putting a hold on their funding. And to speak to on behalf of United Way and on behalf of some of our partners, that's going to be a challenge for them because there are annual opportunities. Some of the foundations have quarterly offerings, and so just being able to manage that calendar, but also the reliability of some of those funds may have dried up for now. They're just, putting a hold on it, which doesn't mean that it won't open back up. But from our standpoint with our partners, it is a very different process. And that's the process that I mentioned earlier with community investment. And that's where our volunteers are reviewing those applications and going on virtual site visits just like this. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, I really covered the United Way part, but to Sarah,
Yes.
how other, Lauren kind of alluded to this, but how can you expand upon that question of nonprofits connecting with foundation finance sources?
So honestly, what I always teach is that creating trust is the most single important thing with any foundation. Whether they give you $100 to $1 million, you have to have genuine, authentic trust with them, and that comes through building a relationship. So my recommendation is that you find out who your program officer is at that foundation, who your account has been assigned to, and touch base with them at least monthly. Let them know what is going on with your agency. Let them know what programs are still in operation, what programs have been put on pause, and why. If you have any financial reports that are due during this time to the foundations, make sure that you do your best to get them there on time. If you need to request to use the funds differently, perhaps they've been funding a food pantry and that's closed, before you use those funds or put a pause on those funds, you need to seek permission and say, due to health restrictions and safety restrictions, this program will be on pause for 6 weeks. Therefore, this much of the funding isn't going to be used. Could we apply it in this other area, and allow them to give that permission, or allow them to give you permission to use it 6 weeks past when it would have been done otherwise? But it's just that clear, transparent conversations, having no fear, just kind of being very honest. Here's where we are. Here's what's going on with the programming at this time. This is the plan, and just continually touching base with them and keeping them updated. I don't necessarily recommend picking up the phone and calling, because I can only imagine how they're inundated with phone calls and requests right now. So I would send things in email, specifically in written form, that can be printed out and put in your file with that foundation. I would also, if you have the chance, to put out a strategic plan right now, and also put out an annual report that you can go back and track your measurable goals and show them the whole picture of your agency or portions of it. But right now it's all about building that trust by clearly and openly communicating with them.
So, Angela, in a situation where somebody's approaching the Kindness Revolution for any type of help, or whether it be funding or just donations of some type, like you said, you're gathering food donations, what's the fastest way to break that relationship, or to hurt it in a sense where they won't be able to move forward with you anymore?
Oh my goodness, that's a tough question.
Very glad he asked that to you and not me, just saying.
Right. Thanks, guys. I think that one of the fastest ways to hurt any kind of a relationship is to not follow through on the things that are being asked of you. we want to, and Sarah used the word transparent several times, and I think that that's really important, because when people are reaching out to you and they're wanting to really give and wanting to see their donations go towards something that they believe in, if that's not being followed through on the other side, then obviously that you're no longer a trustworthy source, nor is the other person who's not following through on what they said. So I think that's the biggest thing. We want to always make sure that we're doing exactly what we said. We want what we're doing to be successful so that we can make sure that it's hitting the right populations and doing what we promised. But we also want to be transparent about it, and we want people to be able to come to us and ask us the questions and be able to honestly tell them, this is what we've done, this is where we're going, and this is what we want from whatever the next project is. I think that that's imperative in any business. So
if I can jump in here, so just kind of building off of what Angela said, in a hypothetical situation, let's suppose that she provides a grant to purchase hand sanitizer and masks for a nonprofit, and then all of a sudden the market dries up, or they're only able to buy half of what they anticipated because of elevated costs. Those are not moments to be worried to speak to the foundation. Those are moments to reach out to that donor or foundation immediately and just be honest and say, you gave us $1,500 to purchase 1,000 masks. Because of price increases, we were only able to purchase 500. Here's the receipt. That's just going to continue to build that relationship and trust, and it may even end up with the second donation to purchase the rest that's needed. But if your program stumbles or doesn't work out quite as you planned or pitched, I wouldn't worry about it. I would be honest and share what happened and why it worked out that way. You will be pleasantly shocked at how the foundations will respond to you.
All right. Well, and transparency is absolutely key. I mean, I know that that would apply just for anybody, not just with nonprofits, but somebody being late on their rent at an apartment, being able to jump in and just ask for help. Because as of right now, I think everybody is in that position of uncertainty, and we definitely don't want to catch people off guard if we can avoid that. So, with this, is there anything that we haven't covered in the sense that any of the three of you want to add that I may have missed in asking this? Because I want to make sure that these nonprofits and these foundations that are connecting in this time are as equipped as possible for the connection side and the relationship side.
I think just really focusing right now on when you reach out to your donors, don't just be reaching out with a hand and an ask. Reach out and ask them how they're doing, what's going on with them, and really focus on creating that personal relationship with them. If you know a donor is struggling and they just need to vent, then let them vent to you. I think providing those safe places is a good thing, but also trying to meet some of their needs as well as your needs. I mean, how would you feel if every time the phone rang, it was little Bob asking you for money? It needs to be a relationship where there's give and take on both sides, where, you're calling saying, thank you so much for the donation, or, hey, I just wanted to send you a quick text message with a picture of what happened today because of what you donated. And then follow up 2 days later, hey, I just wanted to ask, how are you doing? What do you need? Is there anybody I can connect you with to help you through this struggle? Or can you access our services? Is there something we can provide for you? So I think it's very much remembering that this is a two-way street and building those relationships and not just making asks.
So basically the thing is, don't be treated like a bank, or don't treat somebody like a bank in this particular case.
Yes.
What other grants do we know that are available? I know the EIDL and the PPP weren't. The EIDL was partially possible for nonprofits, but are there any other things right now that we can direct nonprofits and foundations towards to be able to shore up their coffers in this case of being able to fund things, considering we don't know how long donors are going to be able to give?
So the majority of your foundations have put a pause on normal funding, their normal funding cycle, and are actually asking for requests that are directly affected by COVID-19 and funding that you need right now to make it through that process. So I would say if you have an established relationship with a foundation, reach out to them first. Then your donors who give regularly, I would send a letter to them. And then from there, it's going to be that grassroots approach and the working through your community and networks and different sources, finding out, just about every company now has a social investment portion, and finding out what that is and how you can access that. I think that's going to be key, but it all stems from relationship building. Angela and I spent, I think, 8 months getting to know each other in Leadership Lawton before we ever started working together. And we had a great time just sharing laughs and growing. So we had an established relationship that when we started working on projects together, it was a very easy transition. And we had a lot of fun with that. But my point is, it's establishing relationships. I've known Lauren for years and talked to her about ideas for years. So now I'm comfortable calling her saying, hey, Lauren, I've got this idea. I want to try this with United Way. And we have that established relationship. So I think right now, too, it's about getting to know people and looking at them as more than just a dollar sign.
Absolutely. And to that as well, just to add some resources for nonprofits, the State Department of Commerce hosts a Zoom meeting every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Throughout the day, they have calls with different sectors. 8 a.m. is nonprofit, and then it goes everywhere from banking, finance to manufacturing. So if people are not joining those calls, I would encourage that, because there are some there will be more funding opportunities coming through SBA, and that's what the Department of Commerce is talking about. So I encourage everyone to check those out. And then also the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits is hosting Zoom calls every Wednesday at noon. So those are two great opportunities with great resources. And since things are changing on the daily, it's really important to get the word from the horse's mouth so that you can be one of the first applicants in. I know that with the first round of funding is already gone, $450 billion. So one of our biggest challenges as nonprofit leaders is to be ready to go, have everything ready to go for any grant opportunity, any funding opportunity you can possibly have. And with that comes some changes in bylaws, and if you have to have a borrowing resolution, and I'm getting into the weeds, but just things that we can usually handle in person really quickly take a little bit longer because we're having to do it remotely and we're having to use technology. So I just encourage nonprofits to think way ahead and make those changes to policies or bylaws that allow Zoom calls. I mean, for a board meeting, we've had to restructure that based on Open Meetings Act. And so things like that we kind of take for granted, the fact that every month we can show up in our boardroom and have lunch and fellowship and get down to business. And now that's not the case. So if anybody has questions about those things, I'd be happy to help. The Center for Nonprofit has some sample policies and things like that out there too.
And you alluded to something I think is very, very important, in that right now this is not a time for corners to be cut when it comes to the legalities and the paperwork and everything. In fact, if anything, it's time to be more diligent with it, just to be 100% certain that when this is all said and done, everything is accounted for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Angela, do you have anything to add to any of that?
Yeah, I wanted to say on the for-profit business side, when you're reaching out to the nonprofits, I would just encourage you, if you're trying to be able to work with somebody, have a great resource. I think Lauren's a great resource because she has access to so many different organizations. And if you have an idea, going through somebody like that so that you're really directing your efforts to the right organization is so key, because there's so many of them and they all do different things. So if you're trying to get a certain outcome, and you want to make sure that you're working with a certain population, you want to make sure that your efforts are being as fruitful as possible. So you want to have somebody that's in a position to be able to help advise on that. On the other side of that, I also wanted to note that, again, if you're reaching out into the community and wanting to help, ask people what they need. Don't make an assumption, because it's really easy to sit in our offices or sit in our homes and think, gosh, people really need X, Y, and Z. But then when you get there, you find out that what they needed was so different. So you want to make sure that you're asking them, what can I do for you? That was one of the things that really appealed to me about the Kindness Revolution, because when I talk to people, every one of them has a different need, and every one of them is able to tell me, this is where I would like to take this, and they can really help direct it. And so I would just encourage people that are wanting to give back and people that are wanting to be involved to find out what the need is directly from the people who need it. Don't make assumptions.
Fabulous point.
Yes,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes, perfect to add.
So at this point in time, ladies, if there's anything else you'd like to add, feel free to jump in. It doesn't look like we've got any questions that are popping up. I was hoping we would have a couple. But if there's anything that I haven't covered, please let me know, because nonprofit is something that, while I do a lot of work with nonprofits, it's still something I'm so very much ignorant to in a lot of respects. I think a lot of people don't understand really what kind of work and how heavy the work is that goes on behind the scenes. So please, if there's anything, jump in real quick and let me know. But if not, we can kind of wrap it up.
I think just do exactly what Lauren and Angela said. Dot your I's, cross your T's, make sure you have everything in place. This is a great opportunity. In a way, if you think about it positively, a pause that you've been given to kind of do an internal audit and assess where you are and what you need. And then, as Angela pointed out, I absolutely loved what she said, loved it. Ask what people need. Don't assume. When people ask me, they know I work with a lot of different organizations. What does that organization need? Unless I specifically know, I'm like, oh, let me send a text and ask. And that's, I think, the best thing to do is to ask and be willing to meet them where they are and not just be pushy.
For sure. Lauren or Angela?
I agree with all of that. That was said.
For sure. All right. Well, ladies, thank you again for being on the show. And I hope this answered a lot of questions for a lot of people, because this is definitely new territory for a lot of us. We're able to use knowledge and experience that we've got to go forward into a new era. But again, it's a crazy time. So, if you are a donor or you're looking at donating, we've got multiple options, multiple locations, or recipients for your donor dollars. If you're wanting to volunteer, obviously things are in a weird spot with that when it comes to person or in-person volunteering. But I know there are solutions, and I know there's options out there, whether they be digital or there's something that we can get you hooked up with as a volunteer and a donor. So make sure to reach out to any of the three of these ladies. They can hook you up with multiple options for that. And if you got any questions for them, you can ask them after the fact in the comments below, and we'll make sure that we get them forwarded to them or to whoever would be the best option for that. But again, ladies, thank you again very much for being here today, and thank you for taking the time, because I know it is a work day. As much as everybody might feel this is a Saturday, every day feels like it's a different day. So anyway, thank you again for all being here. And we will see everybody next time. So again, thank you. Again, this was Pandemic Business, and this was our first episode of Nonprofit Corner. So everybody have a great day.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.